Welcome to the channel. Yesterday we received a new patch note. I must admit that it looked a bit unfinished and contained a few errors. At least that's what we might have assumed. But today we already have its updated version, so let's do a quick review. As with previous content updates, there will be server maintenance on April 23rd and 24th, depends on your region. First thing first, new 5-star gem, introduced quite quickly after the previous one. Nevertheless, it looks like its effect will be a source of additional damage.
Hilt of Many Realms 5-star gem. Dealing damage conjures 5 flying swords to follow you for 10 seconds, during which using a skill consumes a flying sword to create a sword rain at a random enemy location, dealing 120% base damage plus 506 to nearby enemies. Conjuring flying swords cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. Sword rain has a 40% chance to drop a massive sword, dealing an additional 50% damage to nearby enemies and knocking them airborne.
So the new gem will only be suitable for skills with a low cooldown, those that we use at least 5 times in 10 seconds. Otherwise we will not utilize the gem effect, which seems to be quite strong, especially due to the knock-up effect. Another new thing, legendary weapons, and here I must admit that I don't fully understand this part. These are definitely new affixes for each class, but as far as I know, the ones he had so far were not specifically named, so it is confusing, and we just have to check it in practice tomorrow.
Here are the following class-specific affixes for these legendary weapons. Barbarian, Crumblestall. Grab now calls an ancestral spirit to hurl a giant mountain, dealing damage and stunning enemies in a targeted location. Blood Knight, Echoing Strikes. Shroud of Night now grants you and nearby allies echoing strikes, causing your next several primary attacks to conjure a shadowy apparition to copy the attack. Crusader, Falling Sword now impales enemies in a targeted area with heavenly swords, dealing damage and knocking back enemies hit. Demon Hunter, Impale now unleashes a flurry of blades in a direction, dealing damage to enemies they hit. Monk, Wave of Light now causes you to strike the ground, unleashing a shockwave of energy, damaging nearby enemies. Necromancer, Dark Curse now curses enemies in a targeted area, causing them to explode and damage all nearby enemies after a short delay. Wizard, Lightning Nova now randomly calls down arcane lightning in a targeted area, dealing damage and knocking back enemies hit.
The next new thing is familiar, BRAMBLESTALKER.
A new beast emerges from the haunted fescue of the woods. The local townsfolk know it for its ability to strike and call it BRAMBLESTALKER. What appears as a tiny shrub finds its roots to become a hulking Goliath of the forest. BRAMBLESTALKER's primary skill plants spores into 3 surrounding enemies, which deals damage and binds them based on their available health. This new familiar also has the potential to unlock passive skills to max out its full potential. Fear this formidable hunter of the forest.
So we can assume that it will immobilize 3 opponents and will probably bind their health. Then the damage will be distributed among them. In practice, it may be that the damage received by one target is distributed to other immobilized targets. I have a few contracts, almost 70 to be more precise, so it's very likely that I will use them. Next thing is the new Phantom Market. Strange that no screenshots were provided. So this is another thing that we will see directly in the game. With the feature updates, we will now receive points for participating in Shadow Wars. So I think it will encourage people to join this activity. Battlegrounds matchmaking changes. No improvements announced, only compensation in points if your team was much weaker. It will probably make it easier to get to Legend, but it won't improve the currently broken gameplay. And some combat performance optimization. Finally, last but not least, new legendary items.
Barbarian, main hand. Cleave now grants you the power of the ancients, periodically conjuring a spirit of the ancient to cleave through nearby enemies. Pants, chain spear also increases your damage. Offhand, hammer of the ancients now rains hammers from the sky at your current location, damaging enemies within the area. Shoulders, cleave deals 25% increased damage to slowed enemies. Head, while sprinting, your critical hit chance increases by 10%. Chest, chain spear now conjures a spirit of the ancients for a short time that repeatedly casts chain spear, damaging, slowing and pulling in nearby enemies. Crusader, helm, sweep attack has a chance to stun the enemy, lasting 1.5 seconds. It will only take effect once on the same target within 4 seconds. Pants, dry and quarter now calls a swift wind steed for you to ride, increasing your primary attack speed. Additionally, your steed will leave behind gusts of wind that increase the movement speed for your allies. Chest, when judgment damages an enemy, it also increases your primary attack speed for 3 seconds, stacking up to a maximum number of times. Main hand, sweep attack now grants you a holy flail for a short duration, causing your primary attack to sweep through enemies in a wide arc. Offhand, sacred fire also increases your primary attack speed, stacking up to a maximum amount. Shoulders, judgment now grants you an aura of judgment, marking nearby enemies with the cross, and slowing them and causing them to suffer additional damage when struck by your primary attack.
And here I must say that this is not the best update for the Crusader. New essence is wise. For the Necromancer it looks much better, and guess something I expected before.
Necromancer, pants, wraith form now increases your movement speed, allowing you to move unhindered through enemies and generate corpses when you pass through them. Main hand, Grim Scythe now conjures a whirling scythe that orbits around you, damaging enemies and generating corpses. Offhand, Corpse Lance now consumes nearby corpses to create a vortex of bones surrounding you that damages enemies. Helm, Corpse Lance deals increased damage each time it strikes the same target within 2 seconds, up to a maximum. Shoulders, while Bone Armor is active it also increases your critical hit damage. Chest, Bone Armor now consumes nearby corpses, increasing the damage you deal and reducing the damage you take for each corpse consumed.
And it makes me want to change class into a Necromancer. We definitely have a new build here.
Wizard, pants, Meteor now causes the ground to erupt, damaging and burning enemies in a targeted area. Offhand, Arcane Wind deals 20% more damage when igniting a firestorm. Chest, after releasing the meteor, you will be in the Emberlight state for 3 seconds. During this period, the critical hit rate will be increased by 5%, which can be stacked 3 times. Main hand, Arcane Wind now unleashes a condensed arcane vortex that bounces between multiple enemies, damaging and slowing them. Enemies already slowed will become immobilized. Helm, slow time now causes you to enter a temporal flux, causing your non-channeled skills to reduce the cooldown of your other skills. Shoulders, Disintegrate now launches a small arcane sphere that bounces between multiple enemies, damaging and shattering their armor, increasing the damage they take.
In the case of Wizard, we have something like quick-cast bouncing spells. With a high probability the new gem will fit here.
Dead Class Monk, Chest, Flying Dragon now unleashes a cyclonic burst around you and your summons, damaging and knocking up nearby enemies. Main hand, Mystic Allies now summons for Spirit Allies to fight by your side, that only use primary attacks. Offhand, Flying Dragon also increases your damage for each enemy hit, stacking up to 5 times. Helm, Mystic Allies also increase your critical hit chance for each Spirit Ally active, stacking up to 4 times. Shoulders, Wave of Light now unleashes small harmonic bursts around you and your summons. Pants, Mystic Allies' primary attacks also have a chance of summoning an additional Spirit Ally for 3 seconds.
And here I would not underestimate these summon-based essences right away. Best example is Crusader with his horses.
Demon Hunter, main hand. Multishot now empowers your primary attacks to fire multishots for a short time. Offhand, Strafe now fires your primary attacks focused on the nearest enemy. Helm, Multishot also increases your damage for 3 seconds. Chest, primary attacks restore 1.5% of Strafe's energy. Shoulders, Daring Swing now empowers your primary attacks to fire a binding rope that ricochets between enemies, immobilizing them. Pants, Daring Swing also increases your attack speed for 4 seconds. Blood Knight. Shoulders, Swarm of Bats now unleashes a crimson tide of bats that wash through enemies, dealing damage and causing them to bleed. The bats will frenzy and latch on to already bleeding enemies, dealing additional damage over time while also slowing them. Main hand, Skewer now causes you to dash forward, damaging and dragging enemies along your path, immobilizing them at your destination. Enemies struck by Skewer while immobilized will be stunned. Chest, Shroud of Night now grants you Echoing Nightmare, causing some of your skills to conjure a shadowy apparition to duplicate the skill cast after a short delay. Helm, while Shroud of Night is active, your damage is increased. Pants, Swarm of Bats also causes enemies hit to languish in pain, increasing their chances of being critically hit. Offhand, Umbral Lance now hurls a crimson spear that damages and causes enemies to bleed. Enemies struck by Umbral Lance while bleeding will explode, dealing additional damage to nearby enemies.
So in the case of Blood Knight, we will receive another dose of multiple effects essences. We already get used to that, not gonna lie. Unfortunately, in this update we didn't see anything about a new class or improving items beyond level 30. However, I would expect this in the next major update. As always, thanks for watching.